Am I wrong for not showing up to my engagement after finding out my boyfriend was planning to propose? I, 28 female, have known for a while that my boyfriend, 38 male, was going to propose. We've been talking about marriage, rings, etc. for a while. I didn't know when or where, but I thought I knew the how. This is because I've made it clear that I would absolutely hate a public proposal. The very idea gives me hives and makes me queasy with anxiety. It's a personal preference and comfort zone thing and not an opinion on other people's proposals. There have been a few times when I thought he was going to ask, but I was wrong each time. The night of the conflict was my birthday last week. We were going out to celebrate and he had given me my gift early to wear to dinner, since it was the first time we'd be going out for my birthday since pre-COVID. We were meant to meet at the restaurant, but my dad called before I left, asking if our big announcement tonight was baby related. And if so, he'd like to congratulate me in advance in case he didn't make it due to a travel delay. You know what? It's just like a dad thing. Leave it up to dads to ruin every surprise. A few minutes into the call, I put two and two together and immediately called my best friend, who reluctantly confirmed my fears. She hadn't wanted to spoil my boyfriend's surprise, but she also tried her best to convince him to scale it down because she knew I wouldn't like what he had planned. At this point, I was very late and my boyfriend had been texting saying that I was going to make us lose our reservation. I called and asked directly if he was planning a public proposal. He couldn't deny it, and after he told me he'd reserved the entire restaurant for 75 people, I told him this wasn't what I wanted and that I'd be happy to attend, but only if he promised not to do it in front of everyone there. He said he told some people and that word got around and they were now expecting a proposal, so he was going to do it, otherwise he would have wasted everyone's time and money coordinating and getting them down there. I said that if he insisted on doing this in a way which made me uncomfortable, I wouldn't be coming at all. I hung up and at that point stopped answering because I was hurt. He's living and we've been fighting all week because I embarrassed him in front of our friends and family by not showing up. He says that I'm making a big deal of it and we both know I would have said yes, and that I'm being ungrateful because any other woman would kill for a boyfriend who would go through the trouble to make a grand gesture. While I agree that I had every intention of saying yes when I was coming, I don't like being on the spot or being made to feel obligated to say yes because of an audience. He said he won't consider proposing again until I apologize for embarrassing him and promise to chill out about my preferences in the future. I don't feel like I should because he knew I would have preferred something more intimate and romantic. So, am I the asshole?
Put a finger down if you have a best friend. Now put a finger down if you think your best friend will murder you and stab you over 50 times simply because she decided she doesn't want to be your friend anymore. Unfortunately, that is the true crime case of Skylar Annette Niece. Okay, so boom. Skylar was a 16-year-old girl who actually was an intelligent straight A student, top of her class. She's what you would call a good girl. She was the only child to her parents, Mary and Dave, and since she was the only child, she was literally their light, pride, and joy. When Skylar was 8 years old, she met her best friend Sheila Eddy at a community church. Sheila was a bit more on the wild side, more of a bad girl type of vibe. Sheila came from a broken home and she was also an only child, so her and Skylar became really close. So close that Sheila could just walk into Skylar's house at any time because they treated her like family. They continued to be best friends throughout the year, and once they got into high school is when they met their third best friend, Rachel Schultz. Rachel was also raised as an only child and came from a religious family, but she lived a rebellious, wild life when she wasn't around her family. Everything was good at first until Skylar started to become the third wheel. Sheila and Rachel would rebel and do things like sneak out and smoke weed, but Skylar wasn't into that because she was more of a good girl. Eventually, Sheila and Rachel stopped inviting Skylar to anything because she was no fun and boring. It was also rumored that at a sleepover, Skylar seen Sheila and Rachel get intimate with each other, and they also didn't want her to spill their secret of them getting intimate with each other, so they were pushing her out for that reason as well. Nonetheless, being left out made Skylar extremely sad. It made her so sad that she vented and said things on Twitter like, "Sick of being at fucking home. Thanks friends, love hanging out with you all too. Just know I know. Hope you don't expect me to give a fuck anymore. Bye." Fast forwarding a little bit, eventually Sheila and Rachel invited Skylar out. But Skylar would have to sneak out to do that. She hesitated at first, but she missed her friends so much and wanted to be back cool and part of the group that she just decided to go. Skylar kissed her parents goodnight, acted like she went to sleep, but snuck out the house. She got into the car with Sheila and Rachel and they went to a secluded area in the woods where they would usually smoke weed. But instead, it was a setup and Sheila and Rachel counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. Then they stabbed Skylar over 50 times and murdered her. She tried to run and fight back, but they overpowered her and they said that her last words were, "Why?" Like for part 2. Stabbing your best friend over 50 times and murdering her because you don't want to be friends with her anymore, part 2. Okay, so boom, like I said, they counted to 3 and murdered their best friend by stabbing her over 50 times because they didn't want to be friends with her anymore. They left her body there and said her last words were, "Why?" After Skylar's parents reported her loss, Sheila had the audacity to act concerned and would go to Skylar's parents' house, cry, and act like she was trying her best to get answers, knowing she was the one who killed their daughter. And while Sheila was acting worried and concerned, she had the audacity to go on Twitter and tweet subliminals like, "Why is my favorite question?" knowing that was Skylar's last words. And she also tweeted, "We really did go on 3. Because on 3 is when they attacked and killed Skylar." Eventually, investigators questioned Rachel and Sheila so heavily because they were caught in so many lies. Rachel eventually broke down and confessed to everything. Both were charged with murder, and Sheila got life and eligible for parole in 15 years, and Rachel got 30 years and is eligible for parole in 10 years. Be careful who you call friends, guys.
Am I the asshole for canceling the entire trip after finding out that my husband hid my daughter's passport? Disclaimer, this is not my story. My husband and I have been together for 3 years. He has 3 kids from his previous relationship and I have 1, she's the oldest, 17. He's a dedicated man, puts God first, and loves everyone. My husband always complains that my daughter doesn't spend time with her step-siblings or him, but she has reasons for that, which is school, health issues, and work. She does her best to spend as much time with him as she can. But my daughter, on the other hand, complains that her stepdad tells her to basically take on the role of a babysitter whenever she's with her step-siblings. My husband denied that and said that my daughter was making up excuses to not spend time with his kids. For this issue, I figured that a family trip is what the family needs to get together and spend more time around each other. My husband liked the idea but said that his kids are now uncomfortable around my daughter because of her attitude. He then suggested we let her stay home and have the house all to herself since that's what she always wanted. Am I the asshole for canceling the entire trip after finding out that my husband hid my daughter's passport? Disclaimer, this is not my story. He suggested we let her stay home and have the house all to herself since that's what she always wanted. I told him it's best that we all go. He kept complaining until I snapped and told him to stop. I booked and paid for the whole family, however, my daughter told me she couldn't find her passport. We turned the house upside down looking for it but couldn't find it. My husband said maybe it was a sign from God that we should let her stay home so the trip wouldn't turn into a disaster. I ignored his comment, but later while I was cleaning his office, I found the passport tucked away in a drawer under a ton of papers. I confronted him about it and he swore he had no idea why or how the passport got there. I checked the upstairs camera and saw him enter my daughter's room. I screamed my head off at him, then canceled the whole trip completely. He said I overreacted and that he didn't want his kids to be miserable on the trip, and that he's willing to apologize to my daughter if I reconsider my decision on canceling the trip. I said it was final and that it was done.
I'm the asshole for not inviting my brother to my wedding. I'm 25 and my fiance is also 25. We're getting married this June, and I just sent out the wedding invitations. I did not send one to my brother though. I have never really been close to him, and we're having a very intimate wedding, and it just doesn't make sense for him to be there. As I don't really talk to him, we have little to nothing in common, and I haven't seen him in like 3 years. He didn't go to my graduation, he didn't go to my engagement party, so it doesn't make sense for him to go now. When he found out, he called me for the first time in 2 years, saying how he was deeply hurt how he was not invited. I tried to understand where he was coming from, but I explained to him all my reasons. My parents now are even upset as well. Should I just invite him?
Am I the asshole for telling our neighborhood about my neighbors spying on my wife? My wife and I bought my grandparents' house a year ago. It's a good home in a good neighborhood with a pool. I'm an architect and my wife is an interior designer, so we did do some works around the house. Neighbor in question is neighbor A and the other is B. The pool is closer to neighbor B in the backyard, so we decided to put a sliding lattice wall. We also recessed the pool area. I did this because sometimes my wife likes to tan and swim topless. Days ago, we were chilling at the pool and my wife took off her top and we were canoodling. But nothing crazy. A neighbor told us this is a family neighborhood and we do better to keep that in mind because A saw us last night. Am I the asshole for telling people in our neighborhood about my neighbor spying on my wife? That was odd because she had to stand at the very end of her property and because of her height get in something. We shut our mouth, but 5 days ago when I came home from work, my wife was out having a discussion with our neighbors. It turns out the lady caught her husband watching my wife the second time and was calling her names. I sent them home threatening to call the police if we caught the husband doing that. I guess the lady wanted to spread the word before we did to save face and told a few of her neighbors about my wife being indecent. So I went out of my way too. I told her friends in the neighborhood what her husband did to my wife. And now they're casting her out.